Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be discussing the hobbies I've tried, failed, and succeeded at in the last 3 or 4 years. I would say that until I turned 18, I didn't have a single hobby. I played lacrosse, I went to school, and I had friends. But outside of that, there was nothing that I really just did for me time besides binge Netflix, which is kind of a hobby, but not the kind that you really want to be like, oh, that's my biggest hobby that I do, and people ask you, oh, what do you like to do? I believed that I was incapable of having any ounce of creativity in my body, having learned in my adult life that that is absolutely not true. So I would say it was probably once I got to college that I started collecting hobbies, as I call it, because one day I just started doing things and then just vigorously did not stop. So I'm going to basically be rating them based on my level of enjoyment, the level of difficulty that I perceived, and how much I believe it costs, all out of stars, 5 stars. So there will be reasons why certain things are rated certain ways, and I'll explain that all as we go. And so I hope that this video inspires you to maybe try something new or share what hobbies you like to do. The first hobby I think I tried was running. I know. Don't look at me like that. Some people would say that running is a form of torture. Some people would say that running is not a hobby, but an exercise. I would say that for some people that is true, but for me in the year 2019, it was a hobby because I ran 6 miles at the gym that I went to in college and said, I think I can run a marathon. Plot twist. I did actually do that in 2019. I ran a whole marathon. It took 5 hours and 40 minutes, which is not fast. But I did go the whole 26.2 miles and cried one time. Just one. So I have no idea why I decided that running was going to be the hobby for me, but it was something that was going to be really fun. And it was really fun to count and track the miles. If you were actually here at the start of my YouTube channel, you would know that once a month, I was letting you guys know how many miles I ran over the course of a month. And I remember the first time I calculated it out and I ran 50 miles in 1 month, and I was like, this is amazing. This is the best thing I've ever done. I was just really proud of myself because I always hated running. I just hated it so much. But I would say that as I've gotten older post-marathon, running is not something that I have actively engaged in regularly. I did actually sign up for a half marathon at the end of this year. So as you can see, we're getting back into it just because I have no self-control. Overall enjoyment for running, I would say, is a 3 because I could do it with my friends. But training by myself was grueling, especially when it would get to the point where you're running 12 miles on a Saturday and you're like, this is going to take me 3 hours, which it did because it was hot and I am slow. I am a slow runner. Difficulty, I would say, was a 5. And running 3 miles is no big deal. I used to be able to finish a 5K in 24 minutes, which was my claim to fame, which is still not that fast, but for me at the time, very fast. And I would say the cost is a 2 because if you can get a pair of tennis shoes, they don't even have to be really, really, really nice tennis shoes. If you want to protect your feet, maybe you need to invest a little bit. But if you have tennis shoes, you can just go outside and run for free. If you want to get a gym membership, that's one thing. Or if you want to sign up for a bunch of races, that's another thing. But to start running is pretty cost effective. I'd say another athletic hobby that I tried and subsequently failed at was climbing. I am on climbing TikTok, and so I constantly see people rock climbing. I had a rock climbing membership for a whole month and then canceled it because I wasn't going enough, and it was not a good way to spend $60 when I was only going once or twice a month. Yeah. I would say that my enjoyment for rock climbing was an absolute 5 because I love going when I do, and I love going with my friends when they invite me or I invite them because it's so much fun to go do with other people. And it's just you can talk while you do it, you kind of encourage each other. There's just and the people at the gym are so nice. Everybody's encouraging each other, everyone's talking, doing their thing. It's great. Difficulty, I would say, is a 3 because I enjoyed it so much that it just wasn't hard. I would say that the only issue I ever ran into is that my fingers would get tired and then I would get frustrated because I was I know that I can do this, but my fingers are so tired that they physically will not grab onto the next hold. And the cost, I would rate a 4 out of 5 stars because to get the shoes, the harness, the everything, everything when you go every time is still $25 a time. If you get a membership, it's still $60 a month, which I guess if you're going regularly is not that bad. But for somebody who gets nervous to go by themselves, that is a lot. So that is why I did not continue with climbing. But I will go if you ask me, and I would love to go regularly. I just don't want to spend my money to go by myself. The next thing that I tried, and also, I don't know, I wouldn't call this a fail because it's enjoyable. I just don't know how to do any tricks, is longboarding. I was really into longboarding. Okay, so that was a hobby I had in high school. I forgot about that. It was something that I just did with my friends, and we were just cruising. Like, we weren't actually stopping at a park or anything. Like, we were just riding around neighborhoods doing our thing. I would say my enjoyment was a 4 because it was just so freeing. It was so great. And then you just kind of feel like really cool when you do it. And people look cool on longboards. It's not like a scooter where you're kind of like, I'm on it. Like the bird scooters. When I see people ride by on those and I ride them also, I'm like, nobody looks cool doing this. So enjoyment is a 4, difficulty is a 5 because I didn't know any tricks, and I tried to learn some skateboard tricks and fell and was like, maybe this isn't the sport for me. The cost, 3, because you could get a really awful longboard for not that much money, or you could get a really nice one for a lot of money. It just kind of depends on where you fall. For me, it was about a 3. Moving on from like physical hobbies, we're going to be moving more into creative, hands-on digital hobbies. We're going to start with some of the digital ones, aka TikTok and YouTube. Those are 2 things that I started doing as an adult. I started YouTube in 2019. I really wanted to start it when I was a sophomore in college, but someone I was with at the time told me that that was a stupid idea and that I shouldn't do it, and so I didn't. And then I got to my senior year, and my then boyfriend, now partner, encouraged me that I should actually do it because they were doing it, and I was like, well, if you can do it, then I can do it too. And this is why we're here sitting talking right now. So I started YouTube, and then in 2020 I started TikTok. Wow, that's weird because it feels like so long in between those. I would say I got TikTok in 2018 but didn't actually start posting until 2020, which is what most people did. So I don't know. YouTube and TikTok, both on the enjoyment scale. I don't know why I'm grouping them together. They just feel so similar. I would rate them both a 5. I would say that TikTok is more enjoyable because the gratification that I get from posting is more immediate than with YouTube. But YouTube is also a 5 because it's really rewarding to put something out that I'm proud of, that I actually spent time thinking about and filming and editing. Whereas TikTok, I'm like, people like it. It's a thing. I have maybe, I think 150 something followers on YouTube and 11,000 on TikTok. So the gratification difference is wide, but they both are just as satisfying. TikTok, I would say difficulty is a 1, just because it just randomly boosts videos very easily, and they're not that hard to make a TikTok video that's relatable and funny. YouTube, I would say, is a 3 because you do have to sit down and edit. Honestly, it could be closer to a 4 or a 5 because you have to think of an idea, sit down, film and edit it, upload it, and then people might not even see it. And then you're like, well, that was a couple hours out of my life that I just spent on that. But again, if you're doing it for the right reasons, it don't matter. You're having a good time. Cost for TikTok versus YouTube, I would say TikTok is a 1 if you already have a smartphone. Just download the app and go on your merry way. Whereas YouTube, I would say, is probably a 2 or a 3. Mainly because, probably a 2, because cameras on smartphones these days are so good that you can really do anything on them that you can do on a DSLR camera. Yeah. I would say that I started filming YouTube videos on my iPhone 6 and then subsequently upgraded to my Lumix G7. I think it's a G7. I don't know. I bought it on Amazon and I've been using it ever since. There's also perks to having a partner who is a digital creator, so I get to mooch off of their stuff, which is what I'm doing right now. This tripod is not mine, and the mic that's over here to my left is also not mine. Yeah, moving on to more hands-on hobbies, we have embroidery. For embroidery, I would say the enjoyment that I got from it was a 3, and the difficulty was a 1, because if you have a pattern, it's just not that hard to do. I mean, some of the more complex stitching might be a little bit harder if you don't have the instructions to learn how to do said stitching, but you can really Google anything. And I would say that the cost is probably a 2 because I think I got my kit for maybe $20 and it came with 3 different patterns. And then the string to do it isn't, or the thread to do it isn't that expensive, so it's really just buying different pieces to put embroidery projects on that could be perceived as difficult. Next up on the list is sewing. I took a class in high school and I never did anything with it until now when I was out of college. I took a fashion and textiles course. So I guess like when I say I didn't have any hobbies until I was 18, I didn't have any hobbies that I actively pursued outside of like doing them with my friends or casually engaging in said things. But sewing was something I picked up at the end of 2020. I started making scrunchies. I tried to make some masks. That was kind of why I wanted to start sewing, is because I thought it would be really fun to make my own masks and pick out the fabric and just make it myself. Didn't work out so well until my partner got me a sewing machine. Now it's not like anything crazy. It's just the little like $50 one from Walmart, which it still works just as fine, but it's really fun to make scrunchies, and I've been working through all the fabric that I bought and they're pretty cute, I'm not gonna lie. Next we move into things like painting and drawing, which didn't really float my boat because I'm awful at both. You know? I would say that my enjoyment for drawing was like a 2 because I was bad at it. And the difficulty was a 5 because I was bad at it. But it's inexpensive to do, so I rate the cost a 1. I really wanted to be good at drawing, but my dreams were crushed by an art teacher that I had in high school, and my only goal in that class was to get put on his board that he put all the really great projects on. I could never get up there, and I never did. I never ever did, and it was soul crushing. And I would ask him for help, especially when we did like a painting unit, and he was like, well, you can mix the colors yourself, so you can do it. Meanwhile, the classmate I had that was actually really good at art, I just watched him mix all the colors for him. And I was like, okay. Favoritism, never heard of her. I was also dating somebody at the time that took the class. I don't think it was the same semester that I took it, but he took it before I did and loved the teacher, and the teacher was obsessed with him, and then I got through the class and I was like, he does not like me. Painting, I would say that these two right here, that's a Bob Ross painting, and then this is like a freehand one. The flowers look awful if you zoom in, so don't actually look at that. Painting, the enjoyment I got was a 3, just because like you can kind of blur the lines a little bit. Like you can recover relatively easily from painting, whereas I feel like drawing, if you're not, I just never had as easy of a time recovering if I messed up in drawing. I would say the enjoyment was a 3 and the difficulty was still a 5. Cost is a 2 because you have to buy more materials and you can't just pick up a pencil and start doing it. But painting is hard still. Even the Bob Ross painting tutorial was a little bit too much for me because he goes so fast. Why does he do that? He's like, now just beat the devil out of your brush. And I'm like, you have like a whole painting up there and I have one brush stroke. So I can't quite start beating the devil out of my brush. Maybe you need to start beating the devil out of my hands so that I can actually make what I see in my brain. Because that's the thing, is that I'm like, I see what I want to do and then I try to execute it and I'm like, and I know that all it takes is practice, but it's very disheartening because all of the content creators I think I follow on like Instagram and YouTube, like it's become more and more apparent that my favorite content creators are the ones who have like their own little shop and they make prints and stickers and they have these art styles that are so immaculate and beautiful, and I just wish that I could do them too. Not the exact same because like that's a big no-no, but like I just wish that I had the talent to be in the same game as them, mainly because I want to be friends with them. Which will probably never happen, but you know, here we are. The next thing I would say we're going into is bracelet making, which kind of falls in line with embroidery. It was an activity I did with a group of girls that I'm a mentor for. When the pandemic was really, really at its peak, we met outside for an outside event, and I brought a bunch of bracelet making thread, and we sat and made bracelets together and just talked, because that was the only social interaction any of us had had in like 4 months, especially with each other, because they had kept the groups going during the pandemic over Zoom, but once we were able to meet outside, we set it up so that we could all sit in a big circle, spread out, and we were able to make bracelets for each other, and it was really fun. We're going to be moving into some, I don't even know what to classify this category as, but I'm just going to let you decide. First up, we have reading. Reading and I have a love and hate relationship because for a long time I didn't really like to read. I did when I was younger, I would say. But as I got older, like, and school started assigning more and more reading, and you're kind of bogged down by all the reading that needs to be done, and then you never do it. But then if you read for fun, you feel like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, so then you feel guilty. And so I was like, I just don't want to touch a book. Now that I'm out of college, I love to read. And if you've seen my goals video, one of my books is to read 25 books this year, which for somebody who's an avid reader is probably like, I can do that in 2 months. And I'm like, well, I'm just kind of getting back into it. And I've read 9 books so far this year, and it's only April, so I'm cruising through. I might even exceed my goal. How exciting. But I would say that reading, the enjoyment I get from it is a 5 because it's a form of escapism, especially with the way that our world is going. It's nice to escape into a different dystopian society that I'm not actually living in. I'd say that the difficulty for reading is a 1 because as long as you have a book available to you, you can read it. I would also say the cost is a 1. People who really, really like collecting books would say that that is absolutely a lie, but as someone who rents all their books from the library and does not buy books because I don't have the space for them in my apartment, I rent all my books from the library. I actually live like really close to one. It's in walking distance, and so I just go pick up my books that I want to read, I return them when I'm done, and I don't have to think about it or spend money on it. And it's the last public space that exists where you can just be there and not have the expectation of spending money. Ooh, video games are something that I've dabbled in. I'm awful at video games. Awful, awful, awful. Unless it's Pokemon or Animal Crossing. Because when it gets into the games that have all these mechanics that you have to remember, and there's like jumping, and then you have to hit, and then you have to... No. I'm going to button mash through those games, and that's the only way we're going to get through it. But games like Pokemon, where you don't really have to remember the controls, because it's always A or X or whatever the button on the far right is, those are easy for me. I mean, there's some level of strategy to them, but there's no like hand-eye coordination involved. Animal Crossing is the same way. Animal Crossing is so relaxing, so I'd say enjoyment, 5. Difficulty, if it's not one of the 2 games previously mentioned, 4, because I'm gonna forget. I'm a simple person. I see cozy, relaxing game, I click yes, I click the right button a lot, and use the little movie stick to move. How many times am I going to give you a thumbs up? I don't know. Also, I only have Nintendo consoles. I have my Nintendo DS Lite, my 3DS, my Switch, and my Wii. I'm a Nintendo gal. So I'd say the cost is a 5. Because video games are so expensive. I know that it takes a lot to produce them, so I get why. But if that's a hobby that you're into, man. Another hobby that's really expensive is Lego. If you want to look behind me, you can see I just got my new botanical sets in the mail. We have the succulents and the orchid. How exciting. But Lego, enjoyment, 5, difficulty, 2. I'd say as long as you can find the small pieces, it's not that hard to put them together, but sometimes the stuff like falls apart on you, and then you have to put it all together. Whole thing. Anyway, cost, 5. 5. I'm really sad to admit, I don't know how much money we've spent on Lego in the 6 months we've been married. I say 6 months like it hasn't been 10 months. Okay. Got married at the end of July. It's almost been a year. What? Okay. It's fine. But cost is a 5. Moving on to the next thing, puzzles. I don't puzzle often. I love puzzles though. I have some back here from the Dollar Tree. So I would say that the cost of puzzles is about a 2 out of 5 stars. No big deal. Depending on what kind of puzzles you buy. But I would say even the average price for a good sized puzzle is $20 to $25, which I guess if you're buying a lot of them could get a little bit pricey, but for somebody who will settle for dollar store puzzles, not super expensive. Enjoyment, 3. They get frustrating. That, and I don't want anybody else to help me. So it's not it can't be a collaborative joint effort here. So it's kind of lacks interpersonal connection, because I would love to do a puzzle adjacent with you, but don't touch my puzzle. And I would say that, yeah, enjoyment, 3, difficulty, 2, cost also 2. Baking, enjoyment, 5, because you get to eat it afterwards, unless it's bad, in which case the enjoyment is 1. But even then, if you're baking, it's probably not going to taste bad unless you mixed up the sugar with the salt, which is something that people do. Anyway, enjoyment 5, difficulty 4, because if you don't follow the recipe to a T, you're done. You're done. I tried to make, in a vlog that I have not posted because I've deleted it because I hated it, I tried to make blondies. It just turned into like brown sugar bread. I don't know what I did wrong because I followed the recipe exactly how it was. Maybe I mixed it too much. Maybe I just had a bad recipe. I don't know, but it didn't turn out. It was really disappointing. Cost 4, because to buy the equipment to bake can get expensive unless you're like getting hand-me-downs or you're buying the stuff that's less expensive, which is still just as good as the expensive stuff. But like, we just invested in some nice bakeware from Caraway. We got it on a really good deal from where I work. So we have really nice bakeware now, and I'm really excited to bake with it. Also, we got a KitchenAid for our from our wedding registry, which I love using. Moving into like, okay, so then there's also bullet journaling. Bullet journaling, enjoyment 3, because I can never get the spreads right. I really like them once I finally figure it out and make them look nice, but the amount of time it takes to make them look nice, oh my gosh, I cannot. Difficulty 5, I'm not aesthetically pleasing, and I never will be. And that's my fatal flaw. And if you can roll the clip from Pitch Perfect where they're doing like the auditions, and the bigger guy is like, if I could sing a lick, I could, and I can't. And I hate myself every day because of it. That's how I feel about bullet journaling. If I could draw worth anything and I can't, I hate myself every day because I can't create an aesthetically pleasing spread. I can only create functional spreads, which helpful, but not necessarily what I'm looking for. I just want to open my notebook and be like, wow, this is beautiful. And then like have my people walk by, or like my friends or family, or be like, oh my gosh, your notebook is so beautiful. That's never going to happen. Never going to happen for me. Cost is a 2 because you can get a notebook anywhere. If you buy all the nice pens and stuff, it gets more expensive. But if you're just keeping it to the basics, 2. The last 3, 2 of them I'm grouping into musical hobbies because I tried the violin when I was in 6th grade. It was awful. I did not like it. I didn't mind it, but I didn't like it. In college, I took a guitar course, which I loved. I would say enjoyment 4. Enjoyment 5, difficulty 4. Mainly because I have small little fingers, and I'm not trying to be like one of those girls that's like, oh my gosh, I'm just so small. Like, I physically had to adjust how I was playing when, like, I took the first course, which is like learning the basics of a guitar, like how to play a chord, how to strum, how to do both of those things at the same time without making your brain explode. Second course that I took was a lot of like, plucking and like playing one note and moving your hand up and down the guitar. My hands were not long enough to reach some of the stretches that I was supposed to, so I had to adjust how I was playing in order to play it right. I would say that's why it's a difficulty of 4, because once you figure it out, it's like you can do anything. Cost is a 3, because I think the guitar that I have was like $100, which for a guitar is not expensive, I don't think. One that actually sounds decent, I think. I don't know enough about instruments to be making any claims about what's expensive and what's not, so take that with a grain of salt. Thank you, good night. Lastly, I took a piano class in college, which I loved. It was so much fun, and if I had another semester of college, I would have continued on with piano, but alas, I did not. So, it wasn't until I was getting really frustrated with it, but I would say the enjoyment was a 3 because I didn't like it as much as guitar, and I would have chosen guitar over piano, even though both were fun. Difficulty is a 4 just because you have to use both of your hands, and sometimes that makes my brain explode because I can't think. And cost is a 3. I would honestly say cost is a 2. I got a keyboard for like $30. Was it a good keyboard? No, it was actually really awful because sometimes I would hit a key and the note would play twice, blocking out the other note that I was trying to play. Not ideal, but once I started practicing, I like actually figured out the flow of it and was able to play pretty fluently. Very simply, but fluently. So I would say that it was just as difficult as guitar, but less expensive, but less enjoyable. It's a toss-up. Some people will disagree with me. Both are fun. I would love to do both. I don't have time for both. And finally, the last hobby that should not count as a hobby, but is the whole point of this video, collecting hobbies. It's my favorite hobby. I would rate all things a 5. Enjoyment, 5. Difficulty, 5. Cost, 5. I enjoy it immensely. It's difficult because I have to learn something new, which makes me feel frustrated. And it's expensive to constantly be buying things for new hobbies. Here's what's behind me. All the things coming back up. Please focus on me. Thank you. Yeah, I love collecting hobbies. It's the best. And you get to meet people. Like, when I've started a hobby, I will join a Facebook group for that hobby. So, like, I get to meet cool people or, like, talk to cool people about, like, where they're struggling or what they're doing or how they're... It's really fun. So it's also a good way to connect with others. And craft nights, if you have friends who do crafty things or, like, hobby things, is very fun. They're very fun if you can get a group together and you all just sit around and put on a movie and then you're, like, doing your little crocheting or painting or puzzle or whatever you want to do, or video game. It don't matter, because as long as you're all doing your own thing, you can pretty much do whatever you want and you can all do it together. So anyway, that is me rating all of the hobbies that I've tried, failed, and succeeded at in the last, like, 3 or 4 years. I hope that, as I said before, this has inspired you to try something new or maybe something out of your comfort zone. So with that being said, please like, comment, and subscribe down below, and I will hopefully see you next week. Bye!